there's a term called evolutionary mismatch, is that we did not evolve to live in the world in which we now live. So some of the challenges like saving for retirement, Social Security, taxes, political parties and voting, none of those make any evolutionary sense. Our ancestors didn't have to think like of global climate change, they just had to make it through the day.
Welcome to the LandLife podcast with your host, PJ Riley.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the LandLife podcast. My name is PJ Riley. Guys, as you can see, my background's different. I'm standing. You can see my annoying hands that irritate my wife. We're working on different things, trying to make the podcast, new, hip, a little bit cooler. Guys, if you're getting value, if you're learning, and you will learn a ton because we got a doctor on today. It ain't me. And we got a doctor on today. So if you're learning, if you're getting all kinds of great information, make sure you like, subscribe, do all that, but stick around to the end of the podcast when Dr. Mike gives his information so you can contact him. If you're learning a lot and you're like, this guy he's onto something, I really want to talk to him more, want to pick his brain or maybe read his book or something like that, stick around to the end of the podcast where Dr. Mike will give you all the cool information and ways to get hold of him. He's on literally every single social media site, kind of like we are. So I'll give the quick intro here. Dr. Mike Brooks, he's a PhD psychologist, author, speaker. He got a doctorate, University of Texas at Austin, author of Tech Generation, Raising Balanced Kids in a Hyper-Connected World. I definitely want to talk about that too. Dr. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, PJ. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're super glad to have you. Dr. Mike and we're connected through a mutual friend. You've heard the name before on this podcast, Matt Wood. One day we'll actually get him on to be on the podcast, but he does a ton of connections and helps me meet super interesting people like Dr. Mike. So, Dr. Mike, let's go back. You're a psychologist now, right? What got you into this? Kids don't run around while they're playing soccer thinking, you know what, I'm going to quit. I'm going to step back. I'm going to start analyzing all the players on the field. Right?
Yeah.
What brought you into this world?
It's a funny story, PJ, because now there's a lot of prep work done with young people. What do you want to be, and all these different things. And for me, when I was a dinosaur boy, so like I wanted to be a paleontologist, and then kind of I outgrew that at 9 or 10, and then I wanted to be a herpetologist because I loved reptiles, and then I was like, well. After a while, I was like, I don't know that is a real living or an occupation. I like snakes and critters, but maybe not that much. And then I thought marine biology. And then, it's like, I don't know. So I really didn't know. I got into the University of Texas at Austin. I remember at orientation, freshman orientation, the orientation advisor had, we had this big group of people, and she was like, all right, now, we're filling out the Scantrons because I'm an old dude. She was like, well, pick your major. And I'm like, what? She's like, well, you're coming to the University of Texas, Austin. What are you going to major in? And I'm like, I have to pick a major. And she's like, yeah, that's, you got to study. I was like,
part of the deal, man.
I don't know. I liked my high school psychology class, so I guess I'll go psychology. That's the level of thought I put into it. So right. It's weird how it all worked out, because psychology actually was a good fit for me in the way my brain works. I wasn't engineering or architecture. I liked a little of biz, but that didn't seem like my heart. It was more sciencey, but not chemistry or physics. So it was kind of a softer science. Psychology hit the sweet spot, and then I did enjoy it. But you have to get a graduate degree to practice. So it was, do you get a master's or a PhD? And I don't know why exactly, but I went for PhD. It's a tough call. Cool. Yeah, they say PhD piled higher and deeper. There's something to that. But you do get a little extra credibility having the doctor by your name, and, writing and speaking, that does help. but there's kind of a cost benefit. So for folks looking at career opportunities in psychology, the master's is usually like 2 to 3 years. A PhD is more like 5 to 6, and you have a year internship and a year postdoc. So it took me 7 years total for graduate school, 5 years of graduate school, internship, postdoctoral residency, and then 4 years undergrad. So that was 11 years. There's the opportunity cost of, well, what about getting your career started earlier? Instead of spending money on an education, you start earning money. And, times have changed. It's so much more expensive to get an education for living. So a lot of people, if they really wanted to just do therapy, I would say go on a master's route is the better route to go. But I went PhD. I'm glad I did. It worked out. I worked in schools for a while. But I realized I couldn't make a living there. They don't pay. It's just one of those sad things about our society that you just can't make much in education. And not that I was money focused, but it was, I'll tell you, I'll give you a little guessing game, PJ. Okay. This is a year 2002.
Think now. This is awesome.
2002. I'm a PhD licensed psychologist, and I'm working for the most affluent district in Austin, public school. And my starting salary was, want to guess?
150.
38,000.
That's absurd.
Yeah. So
that is insane.
Yeah. And and it was like I had a kid in 2003, and I was like, I can't afford, and so unfortunately, if you do a good job and you work in a school district, they just give you more difficult client, and they're like, oh, you did such a good job with so and so, we've got another one for you, and you get like harder clients, harder situations, but you're not compensated in pay in any way because the system doesn't support that. Absolutely. And my mom was a public school teacher for 30 years, and bless her heart, it's tough to be in public schools, and I think they deserve to be paid twice as much as they are. But yeah, for me, I had to make a decision. I went private practice, and I started out in 2004, and that was going pretty well. And I was like, well, what I'll do is I'll get my own place. I'll buy some property, small office, and I'll get all my friends and colleagues. I'll have them rent space from me. I'll be close to home. It'll be perfect. So I did that. That was working out, but psychology and therapy can actually be a really lonely profession, because when you see client after client, you don't get the collegial, interaction, of talking in office meetings and little things like happy hours. Nobody did anything. They just saw all their clients, even my friends. They just go in and out. It's like, oh, you want to go to lunch? No, I see clients on my lunch hour, and no one hung out. So it was kind of lonely. One thing led to another. I got early on the website stuff, and I was getting more referrals than I could keep up with, because my wife, her background was computer science. So me being psychology, her computer science, we had the gender swap thing. It was kind of unusual. But she helped me with my website and the SEO. I got more clients than I could keep up with. And then eventually I decided, I'll form a group practice. And I did that. It was the Austin Psychology and Assessment Center for 13 years. It went well, but, and we could get into this. There's a reason why there's not a Castle Dental of mental health. Like, mental health does not scale, in a private practice setting. It just doesn't. And again, it's not that we get into it for the money, but if you're growing a practice and taking on more responsibility and liability, you would hope that, there's some financial compensation, and it worked out okay. But over time, I realized I created a job for myself that I didn't really like, was a lot of administration. And it's like, some people, and I give them all the credit in the world, they have all the check boxes. Not only they have the business acumen or the sales and marketing or whatever, the psychology clinical skills, but they know how to use social media. They know how to do website. They know how to hustle. They know how to, do all the administrative stuff, the, billing and keep track of stuff. They have the whole package. I only have, maybe 2/3 of the check boxes, after a
That's
certain
pretty good,
point.
actually. That's not bad.
Yeah, it was pretty good, and that's why it lasted as long as it did. My wife was helping me early on, and I won't make this story too long, but as time went on, she went a different direction, and then I was managing more and more. And either I was going to have to hire people to do the stuff I didn't do, but once I did that, then there's really no reason to have a group practice because I'm paying out the money instead of bringing it in. And then I might as well just see individual therapy clients and not have to do with the headache.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, the people I worked with were great. I love that. They made it as easy as it could be. But what happened, one, I started writing and presenting. I found I really like that. So the more I did that, the less my attention was on the stuff I didn't like, which was managing a clinic, which is, hey, our, water dispenser no longer works. We need a new one, it's just stuff, along like, oh, we need.
You're the guy who has to go get it.
I'm the go-to guy for everything, whatever it was, I needed to do it or figure out who I needed to do a sign for it. And as time went on, like that was wearing on me. I was writing and presenting, and I wrote my book, and that, got me a certain level of attention. And I am not a master juggler. Some people can masterfully juggle many balls, and I realized I can't. My ideas and ambitions exceed my grittiness to the grind, of day to day, showing up and doing those things that you don't really like to do. I just don't have enough juice to maintain it very long. And then the pandemic hit. So when that hit, we mostly did in-person psychological evaluations. That was 3/4 of our practice, was mostly kids too. So individual testing for ADHD, autism, dyslexia, depression, anxiety. Why is Johnny struggling in school? We did great work there, but in a pandemic, that has to be face to face, the testing. And it was like, we can't do it. And my clinicians didn't want to work. They were like, we have a pandemic. I have young kids. I don't want to, chance it. And we didn't have vaccines. We didn't know how long this was going for. And that's when I was like, maybe this is a sign to kind of break and do your own thing and focus on your therapy and your writing and speaking. So that's what I did. And that's why I'm here today.
Yeah, that's a super interesting story. So, I mean, there's so many things that you started with. First of all, government employees don't. You're absolutely right. Government employees, teachers do not make enough money. Mm-hmm. And if you do show like a talent or you're good at the job, you never get paid more. You get more work. It's never it's never like, wow, you've done a really good job at that. Let's talk about a raise. You've done a really good job with that. We have a lot of much harder things for you to do.
Yes. We and with the cost of living,
correctional facility a long time for years, and it was if you did well, if you were good, and you were skilled, and you weren't afraid of life. Basically, they put you in the worst place. All the guys in the worst place were the best people, but it wasn't fair because you do a good job and and more work. It'd be much more difficult. But so what you found though, as far as business goes, is it was there was too many things going on, and you didn't want to handle that yourself. Now, some people will try to automate things, delegate. Were you able to automate anything at all, like through software or things like that?
Early on, we made some mistakes. There's like 2020 hindsight of kind of we had a client email instead of Gmail. Gmail was just rolling out, and that would have been the better option. But I'm old enough that was kind of new. You were wondering about security and things like that. We went with the client based, and that ended up costing more money. And then there's like the practice management softwares for psychologists and therapists. They're pretty darn good these days. And I use one called Simple Practice, which I really like. And we moved to that more recently. But for the first number of years, we kind of had a less than ideal, practice management software.
Yeah.
So there's some of those things. Now it's just kind of a given. If you're doing therapy, you use almost all the young people use. There's like a top 3 or 4 out there that they use. It's just like the scalability, because I had to pay the psychologist enough that they're willing to stay with me. If you pay them too little, they're like, why do I need you? I can just go do this on my own and make, twice as much. And they didn't teach psychologists and therapists. They don't teach us anything about business for the most part. Any therapists out there listening who are in school, you probably do not get a class on managing a private practice. It's weird, but it's kind of unsavory in academia to train you in mental health to go out and hang your shingle and, try to make a living they want you in academia or in hospitals or doing something but a lot different. But a lot of us go into private practice ultimately, and they don't teach you any courses on how to manage. So like when I first started, I didn't know jack about my numbers, how to make. I was so way off on some of my predictions. It's painful. Like I wouldn't even want to look at some of my spreadsheet predictions of how the practice would scale. Like what I didn't realize, and this sounds so basic, but as you grow, your expenses increase. And what I didn't realize, not only did I not take it, I didn't take into account that basically they rise about the same. So I never end up turning a corner. So even though it worked pretty well and I was happy, I could have probably just worked in private practice and had 5 therapy clients a day and made as much or more as I ever did managing a group practice where I had like a dozen psychologists working for me. So even after I did, and we had a good reputation, people knew about us. We had wonderful folks I was working with, but it's just because they're good, I want to pay them more. I want to keep them. I want to keep them happy. And then the protocols cost more, and your air conditioner breaks, and it's all the testing equipment, the administrative staff that I had. You have to give everyone raises as you go along, and so raises and inflation, and the cost of doing business keeps going up, so you never end up ahead. Or another one is I grew so big that I needed a second location. Well, now that costs a whole lot to have a second location, and I had to fill it full of people, and I had to fill all the people with fee-for-service clients because we didn't take insurance, which is harder to do. Then I had to buy all new test kits because I had 2 locations. So all the folks testing in location 2 had to have their own stuff because all the other stuff it was at other location. So it's like as those increased, and if anyone can do it, what I realized is to make money in mental health, something's got to give. And that would be cutting some corners, I would say. Like ethically, we're taught like you need to do things a certain way as a psychologist, as a therapist, that this is the right way to do it. And it's very client-centered about what the needs are for the clients, but the business needs and the clients' needs aren't always lined up. So what's good for the business isn't necessarily good for the clients or the practitioners. And so you'd have to cut some corner, like try to pay people a little less than you like, or, try to book their schedules more. What was that?
Turn the lights off. Don't offer toilets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to find all that. And then again, it's like, probably some people could do it and still be more like figure out, though. It's like threading a needle, though. I would say you have to thread that needle, and it takes a lot of skill to do that successfully. And I think at a certain point, I just realized I sort of ran out of juice to try. And I was like, if someone else wants to thread that needle and they can do it better, I have no ego about it. More power to them. Like I had a good run. We provided great services to many people for 13 years. And it's like, all good things must come to an end. And the pandemic was the deal breaker, because things were going well, but it was like such a curveball. I had no idea. I didn't have the stomach to navigate it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I noticed a lot of things that happened when the pandemic occurred. A lot of people went to things like this, Zoom calls, right?
Yes.
So Zoom calls, a lot of businesses transitioned to where that's how they ran businesses. Is your industry able to do that, or do you have to be physically in contact with the person?
That's a great question. So the curveball for me was that mostly we did the testing. That was the differentiator. That was what we were known for. And that was basically shut down for, an indefinite period of time when the pandemic hit. But what rose up was the telehealth and the therapy. So that filled a void and worked out great for many clients. In fact, almost everyone I knew in the therapy world was to the gills with therapy clients, because everyone was stressed out, worried about their kids, their own mental health was, they were cooped up, and having a lifeline to a therapist was a great thing. So the Zoom therapy telehealth kind of blew up during the pandemic. So now every dark cloud has a silver lining. Now we have this telehealth's here to stay. And that's a good thing, because so many people can access it now that couldn't before. And I prefer in person. Most people do. But just as the convenience factor is so awesome, like driving across town after work to a therapist you want to see, but they're across town during rush hour. I mean, you're stressed out when you walk in from trying to make your appointment. And now you can just say, hey, telehealth. And that works great for so many folks. So it is a game changer.
I mean, there's other, also if you're in a rural area and you can't physically
exactly.
If you're that single mom that takes the bus to work every day, right? And now you got to get on that same bus and you got to get all the way out to see the doctor. It's going to be really difficult to navigate all that while watching the kids and doing all these things.
Oh yeah.
It helps a ton.
Yeah, it's been great. And I still see a number of clients through telehealth. Some, it's just the convenience factor. There's a few clients I've seen for a couple years that I never met in person.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But it still ends up working out very well for a lot of folks. So I'm glad that it's here, and I don't think it's going to go away. The genie's out of the bottle, but this is a genie we want out of the bottle.
Perfect. All right, so let's stay on that. I think there's been a rise, like you said a minute ago. There's been a little bit of a rise in mental health issues after the pandemic, right? I think we can all agree to that. It's obvious. You can see it everywhere. Now, how do you see that? Do you see it going away? Do you see it staying? I mean, how do we combat something like that? And I think business people can look at this too. This can definitely relate to people in business that are struggling in that same way as well.
Yeah, there has been a rise in the need for mental health care. Anxiety rates have gone up, depression rates, suicide rates.
Yeah.
We want to have a simple answer and just say, well, it's smartphones, it's social media, like what's the smoking gun? And the best research is that it's not smartphones for most people. Again, it's complicated. There's some people that really takes them down a rabbit hole or hits their Achilles heel, but it's not the answer to society's problems. And I think one of the things that's happened, though, I'm less concerned with teenagers watching TikToks than I am with, fake news, conspiracy theories, the hatred and vitriol that spreads so easily on social media, outrage trends, and it's this self-perpetuating cycle. Like from a business standpoint, you've probably heard of surveillance capitalism, as they're watching everything we do, and then they're targeted marketing. And because it's called a negativity bias, is that we're naturally drawn to negative information over positive, because evolutionarily, if we miss the negative news that there was a pride of lions near our watering hole, we could be dead. But if we miss the positive news that an apple tree was bearing fruit nearby, we're probably going to live to see another day. So we're kind of hardwired to be more sensitive to negative information and tune into it. So that's why, like, if it bleeds, it leads. The news cycle is predominantly negative, and it's not a left or right problem. It's a human problem.
Absolutely.
Because we're all the same under the skin, and each side wants to blame the other side, to say, well, no, you're idiots. And it's like, well, no, you're idiots. No, you're destroying America. No, you're destroying America. And it's like, what's destroying America? Each side fearing the other side's destroying America. That's what's, if anything's going to take down America, it is the mutual fear and hatred we now have of one another, which spreads easily on the news, and negative news about the world, homicide rates, and Ukraine, and atrocities all over the world, and it just leads the news cycle. And so it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. We're ingesting an amount of negative news that historically we just weren't able to access to the level we can now. And so I think we're wearing it on our sleeve a bit, because it's like eating unhealthy food constantly. We can eat a certain amount of junk food and get away with it. But if we're like constantly ingesting like the negative news, we're going to it's going to be unhealthy. Our bodies aren't going to do well. And I think that's what's happened to our psyche, to some extent. That's one of the factors I would point to.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I remember time pre-internet. I'm old enough to remember before the internet, where there was no internet, and we didn't know everything that was going on in every corner of the world. I didn't know what the president had for breakfast today, and I didn't know all these not even interesting things, just things. And I was under the impression, I'm sure we all were, that as the internet grew and technology grew, we'd all get smarter. Right? All this information would be, my gosh, we're all going to be Mensa level geniuses, right? Like, this is great. But like you said, anybody who has a position of power, I mean, it's a sales deal, right? It's a sales gimmick. If I can figure out how to convince somebody to buy, let's say I'm a car salesman, how to convince them to buy my car, I'm going to make ads and articles about that, right? But if I'm in a political world, if I can pull someone to my side by hating somebody else, I'm going to do it.
Exactly. It works. Right? It works.
Absolutely.
And that's the, I'm generally a hopeful person and optimistic, and kind of like what you said, is that at the beginning of the internet, and some of your young listeners might not know this, but there was a hope of what you said, that this access to information is going to be a game changer, because we will be more educated. We'll know how the world works. You just know things, and knowledge is power, right? So we're going to level up, because now we have access to all this information. And now what we're finding is all these crazy beliefs spread on the internet. And then I wrote a blog on this for Psychology Today, but how tribalism trumps truth is, that we were historically a tribal, species, that we lived in like hunter-gatherer groups of 100 to 150 people. And when your tribal member told you there was a pride of lions over there, you're like, all right, I don't need to go check that out. My buddy over here says, watch out,
Don't go over there.
We trusted our tribe, right? We evolved to believe our tribe. And if we didn't, we'd probably be cast out or whatever, and dead. We had to. But now our tribe, we have political parties of 150 million people or whatever. And so you're more inclined when your tribe, if you're a Fox News viewer and Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson says something, you're likely to go, okay, I trust it because I trust my tribe.
Yeah.
But it's not, again, a right or left. It's Democrats do the same thing with Rachel Maddow or MSNBC and stuff. And it's like CNN, if their anchor, trusted person tells them this is what's going on, that's what you believe. Because how can we look up all the information ourselves? I mean, who has done their own research on global climate change, for instance? Like, no one knows this information. It's like way too complicated. So, I see that happening, and I think we're just overloaded with information, and a lot of it's negative, and it starts to wear on us. Like, we get more pessimistic, we get more fearful. And, if you've seen the movie Wall Street with Michael Douglas and Gordon Gekko, and he said, greed, for lack of a better word, I think it is greed, for lack of a better word, works. Greed is good. Yes. Greed works. You could say the same for fear. Fear is good. Fear works. You could see these people at like Fox News and MSNBC almost in these clandestine meetings, like, how can we make people more fearful? Because that's what gets more clicks. Like, as much as the left-wing news media hates Donald Trump, he was great for their news cycle. They made tons of money.
Gotta be afraid of.
I know. It's like, wow,
this is
awesome. And so that's the kind of insanity we're faced with. And I think, we have to figure out how to navigate this skillfully, because this world we're in is filled with, it's like a minefield of things we got to navigate that we did not evolve to navigate. There's a term called evolutionary mismatch, is that we did not evolve to live in the world in which we now live. So some of the challenges, like saving for retirement, Social Security, taxes, political parties and voting, none of those make any evolutionary sense. Our ancestors didn't have to think like of global climate change, they just had to make it through the day. But now we got to go, oh, wait, there's almost 8 billion people on the planet. We got to figure out, it's cold outside in the winter. Should I put a fire in the fireplace? Or wait, am I contributing to climate change? Should we take that trip because the plane flight, adds to carbon emissions? I think is stuff we're wrestling with. It very, very difficult. And it drives me nuts that each party wants to say, oh, this is the answer. It's like, no, it's really complicated. Yeah. It's really, really complicated. And I think if we could learn to get out of our own way as a species and quit fighting each other all the time so much that we're like not getting stuff done because we're too busy fighting each other over, who's to blame for our problems, instead of rolling up our sleeves and saying, yeah, let's work on this together. I might not see eye to eye with you, but let's see what we can do about it. And I'm working on another book on this kind of thing. That's why I'm just,
that's great.
Sorry. So any rate, that's why I see that there's some of the problems in our society and why anxiety and stress and things like that are going up.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I noticed two things online. There people are being pulled apart, right? So we have like somebody to dislike now, right? So that's our current generation, is the group of people around right now are thinking that. What about this? Usually kids rebel against their parents, right?
Right.
In a general sense. If my dad was a police officer and he was very serious and strict, I'm probably going to go the opposite direction. Or maybe a little more liberal, right? I'm going to be kind of go against the grain. Do you think the next generation will be the opposite of this anger, fear? You think they're going to fight against this in any way?
That is a great question. My wife works with a lot of young adults, and she said a lot of them are getting razor phones, like the old flip phones.
Oh, wow.
They're rebelling against like the society where everything's on our phones all the time. And I've done a little poking around in that, and there's some truth to it. I don't know how much traction it'll get, but it's The hard part is ultimately we need to transcend the evolutionary heritage that got us here to begin with, to got us here right now. So our evolutionary history of 99.99% of our existence or whatever in these hunter-gatherer tribal, okay, that's how our bodies and brains develop, like to eat certain foods, right?
Yeah.
We cannot eat cheeseburgers, French fries, and milkshakes all day long. And I can see you work out, and I do too, is you cannot eat that, or no matter how much society's changed and we say, that's just what we eat right now. It's still unhealthy though. We will still gain weight. It's still our bodies need different foods. And so for us to overcome the tribal instinct that wants us to do this us versus them thing, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And I think the starting point is to see, like, if both parties could agree that that's one of the natures of the problem, but the problem there is that's bad for business. If I'm MSNBC and the head of it and I say, you know what, I'm tired of, bashing Trump and spewing fear and hate. Let's go the high road here. Yeah. I mean, there goes my business, There goes MSNBC. And someone else will go, well, MSNBC's dropping the freaking ball. Opportunity for us to double down on it. We're going to get it. And same if Fox did that. If Fox said, we're tired of bashing Biden and the liberals, and we're going to, be more critical of Trump or whatever, and we're going to take a higher road here and try to get along with our left brothers, and we're the right hand, they're the left hand. We're all part of the same body, right? Let's get along. Well, then some other news thing's going to say, wow, Fox has really dropped all those people that want it. Almost like if all the McDonald's chains said, we're going to start serving health food now, what's going to happen? They'll all go to Burger King or Wendy's or whatever. And that's what's going to happen. And so it's a tough conundrum. And I hope what you're saying is true, that younger people look at the craziness and say, we need to start to move a different direction because we don't like where this is heading. But it's a tall order. I'll say that. Not impossible. I like to be hopeful, but it's a tall order.
Well, you're competing against probably two of the biggest marketing organizations in the entire world, right? The left and the right in the United States.
Yes.
They're one selling one product, one selling the other, and they'll preach their own people, right? So their own people will only watch their news or their websites or whatever they're talking about, right? And so if you keep watching this, you'll keep getting fed the same thing, thing you've always believed, right? So you keep watching this. A lot of guys I'm talking to nowadays, guys and girls, kind of at more of maybe a higher business level, a higher financial level. They've kind of started to build themselves up in whatever aspect of whatever career they're doing. They're all saying, I don't watch the news anymore.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't watch. Me personally, I have not watched the news. I can't tell you the last time I sat down and watched the news in, public, local news, national news, anything like that. It's.
How about just checked a news website, like where you just like check the headlines and scroll for a little bit? I mean, I'm guilty.
Most people don't even check the actual article. You just check the headline.
Yeah, you're right.
Donald Trump, fell down and broke his leg. And then immediately it's that's what people think the article is about. Maybe he broke his leg in third grade. And that's Donald Trump is all. Right. That's how they do it. That's how they get you.
He broke his leg from kicking ass, and you're going to miss that part of the story. But you're right. It's like people just look at that headline and these clickbait headlines. Then a lot of people are sharing them without reading them or getting the other side of the story. Because, and you've probably seen those where they have like, if Fox is doing a news segment on like the Black Lives Matter protests, they'll show them breaking windows and fires and stuff. They're not going to show all the peaceful part, but the MSNBC will show all the peaceful and they won't show them breaking windows. And it's like, Well, the truth's more, there's a little, there's some riffraff causing problems. Mostly they're peaceful, but it's like you only get that, curated news feed. And so it gives you this warped sense of what's going on in the world. And it's all this confirmation bias, it like just feeds. If I'm right, I just keep getting news stories that keep telling me, yes, you're right, Mike. And these other people are idiots. And, I see that as a problem. Societal problem, but it affects us individually too. So it's like the individual is part of society, and collectively, when we're all, upset, afraid, pissed off, or whatever, it's having an aggregate negative effect on our well-being. So, I mean, I think America's a great country. I feel fortunate to be here. So for the far left who are like, America sucks, it's like, well, try living in North Korea for a little while and see what you think. Like we're now, and on the other side, it's like, kind of a both and. If you look at our history, there's some stuff that we did that is not too great.
Stuff, man.
Yeah, we did some stuff, and we need to acknowledge that. But just as an individual, like I think of this as like, if you look at an individual parallel, we can all think of our own past and think of those stupid things we did. Yeah. And we're like, oh my God, I can't believe I said or did that. I was ignorant. I was naive. I was mean-spirited. I was going through a rough time, whatever. We need to look at those and look at ourselves in the mirror and say, that's not who I am now. That's what I did, but I want to learn from that. I don't want to sweep it under the rug. I want to say, okay, this is why I don't want to do those things. This is what I'm about now. We don't want to sit and shame ourselves and beat ourselves up constantly, which I think is what liberals kind of do. They get into that shame thing, like want to take the dog and rub their nose in crap and go, look at what you did. Yeah. Look at it. And
I did that a month ago. Come on.
Yeah, I know.
Why is it still in the living room, first of all?
I did that when I was a puppy. I didn't know better.
Why didn't you clean that up a long time ago?
Yeah. And I see that. I heard the term, like Bill Maher did a segment that I saw, and they call it presentism, which is like judging the past by your present, knowledge, to say, well, if I were, living in the 1920s in the Deep South as a white person, I wouldn't be racist. No way. It's like, know what? If you were in the 1920s or the 1820s in the Deep South, the likelihood is you'd be racist too. It's like you cannot do that. And any rate, I think as individuals, like what I work with is having flexibility. And you're in the business world, right? And you think of what you do as a business person, you don't always stay the course no matter what. You go and you like, okay, let's see if this is working, and you iterate, along the way. If it starts to work, you keep with it. Was it Vince Lombardi who's like, never change a winning game and always change a losing game, or some, bit of wisdom like that. And as individuals, as a society, that's what we need to do, is be flexible enough to adapt to this dynamic, changing world that is changing so freaking rapidly because of technology. If we do not up our flexibility game, I think we're in trouble. Like, we have to keep up with how fast society's moving, and that forces us to really be adaptive and flexible. And I think it's easy to get fearful and get entrenched in our kind of, old habits. Yeah. And that's a problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're in business, you have to be always pivoting. You always want to be pivoting. The newest thing, or, is the newest thing the best thing? So you always have to look at these things. And honestly, the news is not going to get you there. If you want to be a successful person in business, don't watch the news.
Yeah.
Maybe if you want to know what the weather is, and they usually get that right about 50% of the time, you can watch that. But it's not going to get you where you want to be. It's just going to pull you in one direction or the other, and either of them are distracting. If you have a business and you're a car salesman, you want to sell cars, sell cars. learn about all the things you can do to sell cars. You know, watching the news is just going to distract you, and you're just going to be angry. So the next time somebody comes in and tries to buy a car, you're going to be pissed off at them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It affects our state of mind. If you're all amped up and negative and angry, they call it emotional contagion. Emotions spread like a virus. They really do. And there's a lot of research on this. So if you put yourself in a negative state of mind by consuming negative news all the time, and then you're going to work, you're carrying that with you. It's oozing out of your pores. It's affecting your coworkers. It's affecting the way you interface with clients. And it's that garbage in, garbage out kind of thing, is that we have to, there's a famous is a Native American story about, I don't know if you've heard this one or your listeners, but it's like of the two wolves, and a Native American grandfather was talking to his grandson, and he was explaining how in each of us, there are these two wolves that are at war at all times, a wolf of good and a wolf of evil. And the wolf of good is of compassion and love and patience and kindness. And the wolf of evil is of greed and malevolence and mean and cruelty. And the grandson asked the grandfather, is like, oh, okay, these are at war all the time. Well, which wolf wins? And the grandfather said, the wolf we feed. So, for your listeners, it's like asking yourself every day, what can I do to feed the good wolf? Just like we feed our bodies, we got to sort of feed our souls, of like, what am I going to read that's going to bring the best out of me? What do I take in? Who do I hang out with to try to put me in the right headspace to do some good in this world, to be kind, to be loving, to connect with others? Because if you're in sales, you want to sell to that person in front of you, whether they're a Republican, a Democrat, black, white, brown, purple, it doesn't matter. They're a person just like you. And we want to connect with them as a person, not as a, political party or whatever. And you know what? Most people are good people. Even if they have different views than us, at the heart, most people are good people. If you get past your anger and hate enough to get to know them, they're just like you as a person, and you want to be in the right headspace to connect with them. And so just kind of thinking of yourself, hey, do I go to the gym? Do I go on a run? Do I go out to coffee with a friend? That self-care is not selfish, because taking care of ourselves can put us in the right headspace to connect with others and spread positivity instead of negativity.
Yeah, that's interesting too. That's part of your preparation. Basically in life, you want to show up prepared. So when you show up to your day of work, you want to show up prepared. Watching something that makes you angry or upset, eating cheeseburgers, is not preparing yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's poor preparation.
Right.
So it's just like anything else you would do in a business. You would have an inventory, you would do all these things, you'd have spreadsheets working, whatever they are. But if you show up to the actual job and you're not prepared by taking in all this negative information and or eating like crap, you're not prepared. You're not doing yourself a good service.
Yeah, and I like the way you're putting that, because like if you're thinking in a business term, someone might think, oh, being prepared for the meeting just means I have my PowerPoint or whatever, like it's all prepared. It's like, no. That's one part of it. How do you prepare in a more global sense of the set? Like if you got hammered the night before and you're hungover, that isn't good preparation. You want to put your best foot forward and to think more broadly of what's my headspace. Have I taken care of my body? Have I taken my nutrition, my sleep? People a badge of honor is like, oh, I only sleep 4 hours a night. It's like, oh, that's horrible. That's horrible. We didn't evolve to sleep 4 hours a night, and we can't just like decide my body only needs 4 hours. There's very, very few people who only need 4 hours of sleep a night, but there's a lot of people who only get that. And that is not preparation. So for meeting, for your work, and to be the best version of you that you can be. So, on this conversation, I would encourage listeners to think more broadly of their well-being and their preparation for the day, for work, to be a good husband, a father. You gotta hit all the check boxes, not just a couple of them, because eventually the wheels will fall off the wagon if you're not taking care of yourself.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's an overlooked type of preparation too.
Yes.
Like, nobody thinks about that when you're doing it.
Yeah.
Because like you said, all you're doing is looking at the headline of the article, and it changes the way you're thinking, right?
Right.
You look at the article, you're like, oh, this guy's bad, that lady's terrible. But immediately it changed your mind. So if you didn't look at it in the first place, it was never presented to you, and you had prepared that way, it's just going to shoot you off in a much better trajectory, business, family, like you said, in every way.
Yeah. Asking yourself, what kind of person do you want to be in this world? Really kind of thinking about that, so that you're it reminds me of this Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. I read this book called Being Peace of his, and he said something that really has always stuck with me is we've got to be peace to make peace. So if we want to do good in this world and be a positive influence on others, our partners, our kids, our colleagues, and be this force of good in the world, we have to take care of our internal state, because if you get all amped up with anger and caffeine and a hangover and greasy cheeseburger and you're in a surly mood and you're trying to be a force of good in the world, it's not going to happen, because you will spread the negativity in almost this karmic fashion. But it really is, it's emotional contagion. It's people pick up, you've heard, like you can sense when someone walks in the room and they're real tense, or they're just relaxed and affable. We've all met those people. Or that they're so negative. You're talking to them and it's like they're criticizing this, they're gossiping, and it's like one thing after another. They're never happy. You've met those people and you're like, man, I don't really like to be around them, because it just brings me down. And then there's those other people, you're like, when I'm around them, I feel energized. I feel, alive. And it's like, okay, that's feed the good wolf. And then, some of those people,
absolutely,
they're not feeding that good wolf.
Yeah. And if you are that negative person and you're in our space, in our business world, fix that now, man, because you'll notice that people just walk away. They don't necessarily say, you know what, man, I really wish you would work on your negative energy.
Right.
They just stop talking to you. They just stop doing business with you, stop working with you. You just don't see them anymore. And you're like, man, where'd that guy go? Well, you were a dick. No one likes you. You're angry all the time. You have this idea. You're trying to push this idea on everybody, and no one wants to hear it.
Right.
So in whatever side you're on, I'm not taking a side on that with that comment, but people, especially as adults, we have so much else going on. We don't have time to deal with those kind of people. So we just walk that direction. And we never think about them again. And we don't do business with them. We don't talk to them. If we don't date those people, we just ignore them. They just go away. And then 10 years down the road, they're like, what happened? All my friends are gone. Nobody hangs out with me. My business sucks. I can't get a girlfriend.
I have a feeling those
switch it up now. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck there forever. I don't want to forget about this.
Sure.
Your book. I don't want to.
Oh yeah. So
that generation raising balanced kids in a hyper-connected world. There it is, right there. And I don't want to forget about that. I got kids. I'm on social media all the time. I mean, I was hearing about TikTok, how fast the algorithm changes on TikTok. You can watch. Oops, my mic's falling. You can scroll through TikTok and actually change what you look at within 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you find something that's negative or that's, something you shouldn't be looking at, it's going to keep popping up over and over and over for just a couple swipes.
Yeah. And that's, I'm not even on TikTok because I'm a little worried about it. I've had one of my clients just recently said how he was like, man, I have trouble with TikTok. It knows me too well. And I keep, it keeps feeding me all these, and I keep scrolling, and he just was complaining about it. I was like, is that going to feed the good wolf or the bad wolf for me? And we all, I'd say, here's the thing with social media. It can be a force of good. but it, like anything else, it depends how you use it, and too much of a good thing isn't good. So I think we all have to kind of put some reasonable parameters. If you want to be brave, if you're a parent or you have a partner, is ask them what they think of your phone use or social media use. It only takes it to be a problem for one person in the relationship for it to be a problem. So if we think it's not a problem, but our partner says it's a problem, it's a problem. If our kids say, I've had teens in my office crying, like just shedding tears because their parents would not get off their phones. And they're like, I come home from the day and my mom doesn't even want to talk to me. She won't even ask me how my day was because she's on Facebook constantly or Instagram. And, and it's deeply, I told her I did well on an English test and she didn't even hear me, and that's really painful. So, the change always starts with us. So, asking ourselves is like, well, what's my media use like? When is too much for me? When can I tell? Yesterday I did one of these click things on, some news things like, hey, what happened to these stars or something, where he's like,
I know what you're talking about.
I wonder what happened to that star, and I start clicking and I'm like, God damn, I went, 30 minutes on this thing. It's like, I don't get that time back. That was, it didn't ruin my day, but it was like, what's the ROI? So that'd be, business term, what's the return on investment? And, if I spent on this, like, could I have reallocated that time? Like for all the time spent on, this is a good one, on social media or Facebook or Instagram. What if you repurposed some of that time and picked your top friends and went to lunch with them or a happy hour instead? So instead of, X number of hours on Instagram, you reallocated 2 of those hours per week and said, I'm going to go to lunch with a buddy that I should be seeing more often. That would be, one of those things that we ought to do. It's not we have to throw it all out entirely, but we use it more mindfully and strategically. And so that we can get more of the positives and less of the negatives. But it's a constant process of asking every day, how am I using it today? Just like eating, again, going back to like, if we ate crappy food yesterday, I always can say, well, today I'm going to start with a healthy breakfast. I'm going to eat salmon and salmon salad, grilled salmon salad for lunch today. Because yesterday I had the greasy cheeseburgers and fries. And it's like, okay, I don't want to beat myself up. I just note it. What can I do today to make today a better day? And what can we do, on an ongoing basis to use our phones and social media more smartly and strategically to ultimately live the good life, to be happy and more connected with our friends, but in a real way, and not that we're getting caught up in the Twitter verse of negativity, which can be a cesspool. And, it's like, that's not good for us. So every day kind of taking a look at that.
Yeah, this has been a really good conversation. This is super interesting. It's a lot about preparation. It's a lot about, thinking about these things before they get too out of control like this, right?
Yeah.
How would you, do you have any sort of like strategy for people that are like, because no one really knows you're in that funk. Those negative people don't know they're there, right?
A
lot of those guys don't know. The political person just thinks they're right, and they don't care they just don't know any better. How would you what kind of self-assessment would you advise people to make? Like, how would you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. One is I would start with like a self check-in of how am I doing? Just every day, periodically. It's like taking our temperature, saying, how am I feeling? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling, pretty happy or content? And I'd say too, we don't conflate happiness with contentment, like pleasure. There's, pleasure of eating a good meal or having a drink, here or there, whatever, going to BS or amusement park or something like that. That can be pleasurable, but there's the deep-rooted contentment that we're really going after. And we're checking in to say, oh, how am I feeling? Because we can't correct that if we don't know we're feeling negative, and chances are, if most of our happiness in life comes from the quality of our relationships. To the extent our relationships are going well, we tend to be pretty happy. When they're not going well, death, divorce, being bullied, harassed, alienated, ostracized, someone dies, divorce, conflict, we tend to be unhappy. So looking at the quality of our relationships and seeing, do we have good friends we hang out with regularly? How are we doing with our partner? And that we nurture investing. You think of financial investment is invest in your relationships. You get no better return than having good, healthy relationships. So is spending time on those. And if you don't find that you have that, one is chances are you're not very happy. And two, you might be putting people off. Now, here's the thing is our egos want to defend that. Like, well, it's just that people are crappy. That's why I don't have many friends, is people suck. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe a common denominator can be us, but that's not to beat ourselves up. Just like as a business, like, if you're in the business world and your business isn't working, you don't sit there and beat yourself up over it, for days or weeks. You say, okay, well, that's not going very well. I'm not getting, and then my profit and loss statement doesn't look very good. What do I need to do to change this? What can help me? And I'd say the starting point with us is, one is meeting our basic needs: sleep, exercise, nutrition, are, they're fundamental. So if those needs aren't getting met, the wheels will fall off the wagon. If we're only getting 5 hours of sleep a night, we're not going to be happy. It doesn't really matter if we're even if we're 5 hours of sleep a night, we're going to pay the piper for that one. There's a ton of research on that. So start with your basic needs. Am I getting enough sleep? Watch our alcohol intake and stuff, there is, we don't want to drink ourselves to sleep every night. That's not good. And then it's hanging out with friends and family and spending time. Once we get our basic needs met, invest in relationships, and then checking in with ourselves periodically of how am I feeling? And then it could be what we were saying is the prep work of, if you're in a negative mood a lot and you're saying, wow, I am negative. What am I doing that's maybe feeding the negative wolf inadvertently? It's like, oh, well, I am starting the news day, or every day with the news, like reading through and, like, hey, maybe start with that. Maybe start with going to the gym first before work. And what we have to do at that point is put change into the equation. We take our best guess at what we think might help, try it, and then iterate. Check. How am I doing? How am I feeling? Am I doing better, worse, about the same? Okay, if it's working, double down or add another element. Or if it's not, okay, what else could I change? And if you feel really stuck, like you've tried a lot and you're just not doing well, like if you say to yourself, an easy one is, what do I rate my happiness right now, 0 to 10, in this day, this moment, and then maybe the past week, how have I been? And if you're at, less than a 6 out of 10, you need to start like looking at what you can do to change it. It should be more like 7 to 8 out of 10 most of the time. And if it's lower than that, then you really need to start like making some changes. Because, when it comes down to it, we will all want to be happy. We don't want to suffer. And happiness has got to be one of those things that we tend to. And as you're talking, it's like, it's the whole package and it's all connected. So if you're in a better headspace, you'll do better in your business life, your work life too. They go hand in hand. But if you only focus on work at the expense of everything else, you're just going to run out of juice. The wheels will fall off the wagon eventually. So it's kind of win-win if you take care of the whole package. and so I think we're on the same page with that.
Yeah. That's awesome. This has been great, man. Dr. Mike Brooks, how can people get hold of you if they wanted to contact you? And I'm sure they will now after hearing all this. How do we get you? I mean,
Yeah.
you're a speaker, you're an author. How do we get you to do anything that you're doing right now? How do we connect with you?
Yeah, my website, drmikebrooks.com, easy enough. And there's no period after the DR, just Dr. Mike, and it's BROOKS.com. That has all my contact info on there too, or easy, you can email me at drmikebrooks@drmikebrooks.com. Would be another. And then I'm on Twitter at Dr. Mike Brooks. I have a podcast and a YouTube channel called The Reasonably Good Life. And I have honestly not been doing as much to that lately because I'm trying to write a book. And what I've noticed, PJ, is I cannot juggle all these balls at once. And it was affecting my well-being because I was just feeling like I'm doing a bunch of things not well, So I'm like focused on the book and speaking and my clients, and then family, because I don't want to work 70 hours a week because I know I'd be unhappy. I can't sustain it. So any rate, that's why I might, on Instagram, I'm not really doing much right now. Still trying to figure out how to use all that. But as you know, it can get overwhelming. It's like, oh, should I be on TikTok? Should I, do Instagram, videos? Should I do YouTube shorts? Yeah. It's like, oh my God. It's like, I want to do it all, but I end up doing a bunch of things poorly. So I'm, Twitter, I'm on a fair amount, but I'd say if you want to reach out to me just for follow-up questions, or maybe I love presenting on this kind of stuff. And really, I want to offer people hope, because I think we're living in fear, and that's not good for us. And a lot of people are very pessimistic about the future. So I'm trying to massage that and offer some different ways of looking at things, and then offer some tools of what we can do to kind of feed that good wolf and get in a positive headspace. So welcome emails to Dr. Mike Brooks at drmikebrooks.com, or my website would be another good way of www.drmikebrooks.com.
That's awesome, guys. Get in touch with Dr. Brooks. That's you got a lot of stuff to talk about, man. That's super interesting. Well, I think you'll help a lot of business people too.
Yeah, I hope so, because I think because it's all connected. People in the business world, they're wearing it too. They have anxiety, depression, stress, and they're trying to balance the work life, with their family, and it's like we're wearing it. So I'm here to try to help people, and that's in a podcast is a way I can try to reach some more people, instead of just one client at a time.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Mike. Here's the big question we ask at the end of every podcast. Okay, I did not prep you on this one. I didn't give you this question beforehand. Now you're gonna have to use your big brains for this one. This is a big one. Okay. We are LandLife. Got it backwards here. LandLife. I buy and sell vacant land, right? Buy and sell land all over the country. If you, Dr. Mike, could buy land or could own land anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
So it's a tough question, because I'm thinking of all the places I haven't been that I've heard good things about.
Yeah.
And then there's, this is the part of the practical part of me goes, well, I've always wanted to go to New Zealand. I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd, and I want to do the tour there, and it seems to have it all. But that's a freaking far away place. I'd never see my friends and other family. But I'll say a safe bet I have. I've been to Hawaii a few times, and I love Hawaii. I mean, I just find it magical. And Maui in particular, I've been, was it 2 or 3 times? And I just find it a magical place. And I'd heard that before. I had clients who live there, and they're like, you got to go to Hawaii. And I went, and it has that vibe of you're in a foreign land, but it's familiar too. So
Yeah.
you got the Polynesian culture, you got the hang loose, kind of vibe there, but then you can use American money and everybody speaks English. So, you
Wow.
have kind of that, and then it's just the waves and just go out and swim with the sea turtles. Have you been to
Yeah.
Maui?
No, I haven't.
You can just like right out from the beach, just swim out and with the snorkel and see coral and swimming with sea turtles, and I just
That's
like,
crazy.
that is awesome. And the vibe just like, I don't know, it is, I keep saying magic, but that's what it feels like to me. So if I could own, there, a
Okay.
place, I think that would be all kinds of awesome.
We'll do it. Maui it is.
Maui, yeah.
That's the place we'll buy next. Maui it is.
Yeah, it's
All right,
expensive.
Dr. Mike, anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I think that I love how we connected sort of the business and the personal, like they're all connected. We are not separate people when we leave home and go to work. We bring everything with us to both, we're all that person, and trying to connect it all as we go into the business world and say, okay, I need to look at the whole package, and I need to prep. I need to be prepared, and not just the business sense, but these other parts of me I need to meet too. And then you're going to get the best return on investment you've ever had.
Guys, I'm sure you learned a lot. Contact Dr. Mike. Otherwise, until next time, I'll see you on LandLife.